Theme parks can amuse us, leave us in awe, or simply entertain us. However, some attractions may not induce enjoyment, but rather fear. Some parks might leave us scared or creeped out because of a certain ride. I'll be counting down 5 of the creepiest and oldest theme park attractions that you may not have heard of. I'll be excluding creepy rides and attractions from well-known theme parks, such as Disneyland, since those have been mentioned numerous times before. The ones on this list are some of the attractions that are obscure and have left many people feeling uneasy and somewhat disturbed. That said, sit back, relax, and let's start this countdown. Tales from the Okefenokee. In 1967, Six Flags Over Georgia had a ride based on Joel Harris's Tales of Uncle Remus and Brer Rabbit. Although the ride did not possess the same name as the book, the ride's animatronics resembled and acted just like the characters in the novel. Due to copyright issues, the ride had to be called something else other than the Tales of Uncle Remus. It was then decided that Tales from the Okefenokee would be the name of the ride, since the story was set in a swamp like Georgia's Okefenokee wetland. At this time, the animatronics of the ride didn't seem creepy due to their small stature. However, the Croft brothers, who were well known for their puppet work on rides, redesigned the entire ride between 1967 and 1968. What resulted was a larger, nightmarish version of Joel Harris's characters. Once everyone has taken their seats on the fiberglass boat, the ride would take passengers to a large plantation diorama. Here, they were greeted by singing crows and then led to a scene where Mr. Rabbit, Mr. Fox, and Mr. Bear are fishing. Next, passengers were taken to a cave and greeted by an unsettling band of critters. Passengers would then watch Mr. Rabbit get captured by both Mr. Bear and Mr. Fox, while lifelike carrots yelled at the passengers, telling them to save Mr. Rabbit. Towards the end of the ride, they were taken to a nightmarish version of the swamp that had dangling snakes and where a tree with an evil face would lurch towards the passengers. The ride ends by taking passengers to Mr. Rabbit's home, where he is now safe with his family. Although the ride was meant to represent scenes and lovable characters from Joel Harris's book, it failed in doing so. Passengers were exposed to creepy animatronics and a few frightening scenes. By 1981, the ride was remodeled and replaced with another ride called Monster Plantation. Horror Cave. This one was intentionally made to be creepy. Apart from working on the Okefenokee-based ride, the Croft brothers also worked on a walkthrough attraction called Horror Cave in 1967 at Six Flags Over Georgia. This may explain why some of the characters look creepy from the previously mentioned ride. Horror Cave was based on antiquated horror films like Dracula, Frankenstein, and Creature from the Black Lagoon. Now, I couldn't find any footage of Horror Cave, but I was lucky enough to find some pictures and a detailed recollection by Rod Bennett, who worked on a book that detailed the history of Six Flags. It starts off like this. As you waited in line, you would stand on a red carpet, which was the tongue of a giant face with large moving eyes. This was the entrance. Upon entering the mouth, you would walk near a pond of bubbling water where 3 versions of the Creature of the Black Lagoon would rise. Next, you would walk into a bedroom and watch 2 men holding a woman's severed head as they laughed like maniacs. Then, you would walk into a scene that resembled Victor Frankenstein's laboratory. The last 2 scenes were Dracula's home and a bridge with a giant spider beneath it. To exit the haunted house, you had to go on a slide, which seemed pretty fun. Sadly, this creepy attraction closed in the 80s, but the haunting memory of this attraction still lives in the minds of those who experienced it. Spelunker Cave. In 1964, Six Flags Over Texas had a water-propelled ride that would take guests into a cave inhabited by aliens known as spelunkers. What made this ride eerie was the dark atmosphere guests had to go through as they encountered bizarre-looking aliens. The first half of the ride took guests into a neon-illuminated cave where spelunkers would play musical instruments and entertain guests. Later, passengers were taken inside a wrecked sailing ship. At this point, most guests experienced vertigo. While being inside, the ship would rotate and make riders feel as if they're turning upside down. Lastly, guests were taken to an Arctic blizzard and were blasted with snow and cold air. The ride then ends by taking guests out of the cave and back to the theme park. This water-propelled ride closed in 1991. While some may have found the ride to be amusing, others may have not. They may have found the large bulging eyes, the elongated faces, and the human qualities of these creatures to be quite frightening, and that's without mentioning some of the creepy music played during the ride. Noble's Haunted Mansion. In 1917, Henry Noble created a small theme park near his home in Ellisburg, Pennsylvania. The park was fairly small and barely had any rides. The only ride at the time was a small carousel. Everything was going well with Noble's small amusement park until it was hit by the infamous Hurricane Agnes in 1972. The aftermath of the hurricane destroyed much of Noble's theme park. After cleaning up the mess left by the hurricane, the park decided to reopen with a new attraction. This attraction was a dark ride called Haunted Mansion. Upon reopening the park in 1973, guests were awed and terrified by Noble's new attraction. Haunted Mansion tells the story of an archaeologist who was cursed for disturbing the tomb of a mummy. This curse not only affected him, but the house as well. The ride serves as a tour ride and shows guests some of the haunted parts of the house. Guests are first greeted by a wizard researching the mystery of the curse. Then they are taken to meet Ruth, the archaeologist's wife. Later, they are taken to other parts of the house where they encounter bizarre-looking monsters, go through a mirror room, an attic, a rotating barrel, and a dungeon. This part of the ride is the creepiest because of all the bizarre imagery it has. Towards the end of the ride, guests are taken to a jungle where they also encounter a few jump scares and creepy creatures. Unlike the previous attractions that were mentioned, this ride is still open, and it still frightens guests. The Haunted Shack. In 1954, Les and Pauline Wilson opened up a walkthrough attraction in Knott's Berry Farm. It was a shack based on the Mystery Spot in Santa Cruz. The shack had many optical illusions, some of which appeared to defy the laws of physics. Guests were guided through this fictional home that belonged to Slanty Sam and Shaky Sadie. Clocks would run sideways, people's heights would change, and chairs were mysteriously stuck to the walls without magnets or nails. In 2000, the Haunted Shack was taken down for unknown reasons. Many speculate that it was closed because Knott's wanted to attract young adults instead of a younger audience. This required the destruction of family rides, like the Haunted Shack, to make room for more thrill rides. Although it may not be the creepiest, it is definitely the oldest attraction on this list. It also demonstrates that even the less flashy attractions can be amusing and somewhat unsettling. From creepy animatronics to gravity-defying attractions, these were some of the creepiest and oldest theme park attractions. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you've experienced any attractions that creeped you out, please share them in the comments below. I'm Bizarre Bub, and I'll see you in the next Bizarre Countdown.